Thank you for joining us on Sunday Interview. I am your host, Grevazio Zulu. Now, government has warned people allegedly propagating anarchy in the country of stern action. According to the Minister of Home Affairs, some people who he describes as disgruntled and undemocratic have been working to destabilize the peace the country enjoys. But the opposition feel the minister is using state instruments to victimize people opposing the ruling party. Today on Sunday Interview, I host Mr. Kampyongo to explain his pronouncements and many other national security issues. Sir, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Mr. Zulu, and once again, it's a pleasure to be here. And, we as a ministry feel privileged to be given this chance to come and engage you.
Now, straight to the point, you recently, you're conference, a press briefing, and you want political parties, NGOs, and individuals who you said were propagating anarchy in the country, that their days were numbered. And you've said propagating anarchy, and I think this is a very strong word. And what exactly, I want you to explain, what do you mean? What are they doing?
Thank you very much.
In broad term, when you said.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zulu. And yes, indeed, I did engage the press sometime last week to just try and look at the security status, situation rather, in the country. And obviously, members of the public are aware of a number of events that have been going on. And my ministry, whose responsibility it is to ensure that we observe peace at all times and ensure that the democracy that we have, thrive, and to make sure that the leadership that is elected by the people through the democratic channels that are there are also respected. And so, when you see attempts at the highest office of the land, which is the presidency, of course, people trying to it's not about the persona behind the office, mind you, it's the biggest office in the land, and it draws a lot of competition. And so that competition has to be managed through the laws that are provided, and that's why it's a requirement, even in the Constitution, that elections are held periodically, and those periods are stipulated when change of leadership is expected, and in circumstances which might require change of leadership due to some events, for example, someone passing on in the offices, especially we're talking about the presidents, there are also provisions that catered for. And this country has had some of these events where we have sitting heads of state and elections have been held. Now, when you see people propagating, leadership change using what could be termed as an unlawful means, it should be a concern to this ministry, which is charged with the responsibility of making sure that, democracy is exercised within the provided laws. So, anarchy is in the sense that, look, here is the sitting head of state. First of all, you start by not recognizing him, and you try to go to the courts of law as provided, and matters are determined in the courts. You don't rest there. You want to continue through other means, and we monitor some of these things, and we are watching to see how far these activities can go, either whether they're being held through clandestine meetings or gatherings. We are monitoring to see how far they can go and what the intentions are. What do you see next? No, we want to impeach the president. What are the grounds? Of course, the Constitution provides. And when the Constitution provides for such, it's also demands that must be grounds, specific grounds.
But
So now,
for people, most of them are not seeing anything unusual apart from the normal democratic discourse, normal democratic maneuvers. The Constitution provides for impeachment. So if somebody says they want to impeach the president, they are constitutionally catered for, isn't it?
yeah, well, they are catered for. But like I'm saying, there must be firm grounds. There must be firm grounds that you should that should require someone to invoke that provision in the Constitution. Grounds, not just someone waking up and say, oh, today I'm going I would want to have the president impeached. Mind you, and I know that, of course, in other countries, this could look like it's a normal. But we must distinguish. In other jurisdictions, the presidency, the authority of the president is drawn from some of these institutions, like the legislature. In other countries, even within the SADC region, the legislature elects who to become president. And therefore, the legislature can call at any time, because that's where the mandate is drawn from. But here, the mandate is drawn directly from the people. And as much as we are a representative democracy, all of us, the presidency, the president is elected by the people. The representatives who are MPs, in this case members of parliament, are equally elected by the people, directly. In other jurisdictions, it's proportional representation, where people go and vote for a block of an organization. Then this organization decides who to be in the legislature, for example. And then from there they say, oh, okay, who do we put as president? Those that have got huge numbers are the ones that elect the president.
So what are you, Minister, what are you describing as anarchy? In this case, is it the impeachment motion? Is it the declaration not to recognize the president? What is the anarchy you are warning people
about? I mean, if you fail to respect,
and NGOs about?
If you fail to respect the decisions of the court, and as it is here, the presidency takes oath before the highest constitutional order in the other arm of government, judiciary, Chief Justice. As much as you may have your economic fundamentals standing right and with the right projections, if you start having some of these developments where now you start casting doubt in the people within the country and those that are outside, that here there could be change of leadership anytime soon, other than the scheduled time, certainly that's not an ordinary situation. So it's not about fearing what would happen, the motion. I mean, look.
I mean, if it was as baseless as you put it, it would definitely be thrown out of Parliament.
Yes, obviously. But what we are saying is that let's not create unnecessary situations, unnecessary uncertainties, when it's not necessary at all. We all know that there will be elections coming in 2021. Why would someone want to be desperate? You impeach the president, so what next? And in whose interest, anyway? In whose interest? Because you still have the provisions in the Constitution that would say, in any case, if anything happens to the president, the vice president takes over. But we as PF, these two office orders, are very comfortable and content with what we have. That's what we floated to the people. And that's
so why are you coming in to try and scare the people?
It's not scaring. It's cautioning people that they should know that those offices have got laws that protect them at any given time. So it's just reminding people that in case you have forgotten, you might cross the line. And the same laws that protect those offices might face you. So that's not scary. It's just cautioning.
There's a concern here that when you issue such broad statements, you're trying to tell the opposition to shut up.
Not at all. Not at all.
You're trying to tell them to be, well, no. Be careful, or else you go in.
You might cross the line. And it's always...
You're trying to instill fear, isn't it?
No, it's not instilling fear. Reminding people that, look, there are laws that we have set for ourselves. And these offices that we are talking about have got laws that protect them. So if you want to, like I said, I mean, if it wasn't for that, anyone could wake up and say, I want to be president today. And they walk to State House and declare themselves president. If it was as easy as that, But if you start playing around with the offices like that, which are well provided...
Do they have a right to say they're not happy?
About what?
I mean, the purpose of being in the opposition is probably to take over power, isn't it?
No. Look, the role of opposition is in so many angles.
One of them is to take over power and change the way government is run.
Take over power legitimately through the processes that are there, through the electoral processes.
And the motion in Parliament is a legitimate.
How legitimate is that?
It's provided for by the Constitution.
It's provided for, but there must be grounds. But even if, and to borrow my elder brother's words, Honorable Given Wind, the Minister of Justice, who was just the other day talking about this issue, that let Parliament deal with that matter. In fact, I wouldn't want to do so much because
it's on the floor.
The Deputy Speaker made a ruling on that aspect, on that matter, and we shall allow Parliament to deal with it. But I want to say this, and to assure the people of Zambia, that their elected leader is still in charge of the state affairs. And so that motion we are talking about, as much as it is before Parliament, whether Parliament decides to even, to bring it on the floor, if we are obviously geared. That's why we have formed government, because we have got numbers, necessary numbers to form government. And so the numbers that we have obviously cannot permit any of that mischief to take place in Parliament. But what I just want to say, our concern is that the signals that you are sending, as baseless as it could be, and you have seen how unfortunate that I'm constraining myself to discuss it so much, because I know the provisions of how we conduct business in Parliament. But you see, before the motion was even brought to Parliament, we saw people debating on private TV stations, debating it, trying to give an impression to the people, and in their ignorance, they were even going as further as saying this motion will come on such and such a day. Whether they opted to be ignorant about it or they were playing to the gallery, only God knows, because the Speaker of the National Assembly doesn't get dictated to, or now he should conduct business of Parliament.
Now, I can see that you're grappling with one big problem, one big challenge, social media and how it's being used by people, probably in a very illegal way, to propagate hate speech, lies and everything. And this is a problem that cuts across ministries. How are you handling that?
Well, I mean, yes, indeed, I agree with you that in as much as social media has come to make communication easier between people and between organizations, between institutions, it has also become a source of worry and a source of concern. And to some extent, it's now becoming a security concern. And so we are looking at various ways. I mean, we have got the ministry responsible for communications and the Smart Zambia platform, which has come now to try and regulate. But from the security aspect, we are trying to put measures in place so that citizens are not abused. Citizens are not, made to live in fear. Because if someone today created something on Mr. Grevazo Zulu, what recourse has he got? To defend himself or to be protected through the laws, just as he would be protected by someone going to physically, abuse him or even verbally abuse him, So these are matters that are drawing our attention, and I want to assure the nation and you, my dear colleague, that we are not sitting back. We will soon be implementing certain measures that will be well intended, simply to protect citizens and simply to make sure that those who think they can get away and they can hide behind the social media platforms, the ICT platforms that are there, that they will have no room to run away from,
no
and
place
escape
to hide. Now,
from wrongdoing.
On the issue, I know that you did discuss about it, but I did raise a concern to you that opposition parties, individuals, civil societies, there's a concern that you probably are using state instruments to victimize people. One of them is that there seems to be this pattern that any senior political figure that differs with government and has a case to deal with the law, they are denied bond. It's automatic almost. The script is the same. You visit Woodlands police station, you know you're not going to come out.
Not at all. The only difference is that those you are calling big figures draw attention from the public. The media wants to be follow what is happening, as opposed to an ordinary citizen. An ordinary citizen who is also probably arrested for some offense, it doesn't matter because no one follows, no one cares to know what is happening to them. So, but the law has got no face. The law has got no face. He doesn't know Mr. Grevazo Zulu. He doesn't know Honorable Kampyongo. When it's broken, everyone should face it. Same way. Equal. That's how it is. And it's unfortunate. And this is hypocritical.
Like I was saying, the script is almost the same. You differ with the government today, tomorrow SEC visits you. You go to Woodlands, the bond is denied. There's all this drama around this bond issue. Is there no straightforward way of getting police
Before
bond?
we get to the bond, let me give a background. And this is the hypocrisy we should avoid as a nation. We should avoid this hypocrisy. I'll give a classic example. The president makes pronouncements about his own ministers, his own cabinet. He says, look, I've been receiving reports that some of my ministers are engaged in wrongdoing, corruption. And he says, I'll start acting. And the public is saying, we want to see you start acting. We want to see you start acting. Why are you not firing? You know, I haven't fired anybody. He's waiting to see what is coming from his agencies. He fires one individual as a corrupt suspect, dropped from cabinet, and he uses those as grounds. I am parting company with this particular individual. But because the public never expected, probably, that it would be one big figure who could be touched. And the president must be commended for being that kind of brave person he is. And he has made it very clear to all of us that you are caught up in wrongdoing, you have got no sanctuary.
No one has got concerns.
So now listen to me. I want to answer you so that you
do wrong things.
Clearly.
But people have got concerns.
No, wait a minute. I want to make it very clear so that my people out there can understand. Unless you want to tell us, and you should tell the president that when you are investigating corruption, if you are dealing with a big figure, please don't lock them up. Don't give them to anti-corruption. Keep them at home. They don't appear in court. That's what we should be telling the president. And gladly. Who wouldn't want to be that? But if he says, if you have committed the same, you have to go through what others go through, then it becomes a problem. If he says, no, the anti-corruption, we have requested for this person, here is this person. And they say, no, for us to do this, we have to formally arrest this individual. And once he's arrested, he will follow the same formalities of applying for bail, applying for bond. And if it has to be done through the courts, it goes to the courts and the bond is extended. So there's no creation of new rules, new laws. It's the same thing. That would happen to Mr. Grevazo Zulu. That would happen to any other citizen. But because it's this individual who is perceived in those commas, that is a big shot, the treatment should be different. And they also want to play drama. They want to play drama and play victim. First of all, answer to the charges that have slapped through the channels, through the courts of law. And if you are found clean, let you get cleared. But if you are saying the president you can ask him to deal with someone and make them available for the law enforcement to deal with them, you should also say that, no, Mr. President, since Mr. Kampyongo was a minister, please, we don't want to see him arrested. You don't want to see him locked up. Those are the things you should be telling the president. But to play double standards and say, no, deal with those who are doing wrong in government. When it happens, and you know, this is very interesting. And this is what I've seen from our opposition colleagues. Today, if there's allegations about corruption, they will jump on the ante and say, hey, he's corrupt, he's fine. When I just get on the other side and I say I'm becoming probably a member of UPND, one day I become clean. You see them escorting me, solidarity. But what kind of people are we? We have seen it happen. You remember, and sorry to say, I've got my elder brother who is the vice president for UPND, Honorable GBM. Minister of Defense. No, he's a corrupt man. He's this. He's getting out the tenders. He just crosses the floor to go to the other side. He's a clean man. He's our big boss. He's our vice president. Honorable Sylvia Masebo, Minister of Tourism. No, WTO. You were the one who was taking money and you have given yourself contracts. She was standing barefoot in Parliament, being grilled by our colleagues from the opposition. She crosses the floor to go to the other side, clean individual. They're even the ones escorting solidarity. So, when we are offering checks and balances, let's be sincere. And so, coming to your question, there is no selection. If someone is appearing,
there's no abuse.
There's no abuse at all. The same thing that is happening to the would-be, the so-called big shots, is what is happening to the ordinary citizens. And there are a number, full of them, have got correctional service under my ministry. Full of people. Some of them my relatives, some of them my friends.
But probably what surprises people is that these are people fixed aboard. These are people you sat with in cabinet. Suddenly they flight risk, they can run away.
No, my dear colleague. Look, if you have to change and you want to say special people must be treated specially.
Well, without necessarily looking at special people, shouldn't every Zambian have that?
There are people that are behind the cells, even today as I speak. Most of them are fixed aboard. And if you are to
so the state is abusing them?
How do they abuse them? How? Where there has been abuse, I mean, people have even gone to the courts of law and say, I was abused by
Shouldn't getting bond be an easy thing, and then you face your charges in court, and that's fine, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's how it is. I mean, the offenses that are bearable are bearable. The offenses that are not bearable, those of capital offense, they are also known. And so, unless you are changed, these things, the enforcers will just enforce the law as it is. And the courts will interpret it as it is.
There just seems to be this coincidence of when you are against the ruling party, you suddenly find yourself in probably the commanding officer is not available, the magistrate is not available, and you probably there's just this perception that the state wants you to sleep in the cells.
If that was the case, if that was the case, Mr. Zulu, if that was the case, today people would have been scared to even form political parties. How many people? Today, we have come from the era where we used to just have ZNBC. Now there are so many media platforms. There are so many. I am the Registrar of Societies under the Ministry of Home Affairs, where political parties are registered. And I can tell you, we have got more than 50 political parties, some of them new as 2 weeks. And all these people have got platforms.
As Minister of Home Affairs, maybe I should ask you.
Let me say this.
Why is it so difficult to get bond anyway?
Well, again, it depends on circumstances, and it depends on the offense. But it shouldn't be a case. It shouldn't be an issue. And I think these are matters that we have been discussing between the Minister of Home Affairs and the Minister of Justice through the law reforms, you know, to look at which cases. Because even me, my facilities are overloaded. You know, the remandee facilities are overloaded, overstretched, because it's only now that this government is trying to increase the capacity of our correction facilities.
Police bond is discretionary and it's given by the commanding officer. So why are you even discussing with the Minister of Justice?
No, but you see, again, you remember that not too long ago, last year, we went round with the Minister of Justice and other stakeholders to try and see how people are kept, so that we could have first-hand how people are kept. Those that are denied bail, those are things that we are trying to address. Why? Because we know that, just as we all know, justice delayed is justice denied. And one of the conditions of people who are appearing before the courts is bail. Bail is either given at the courts of law, and police bond is also given at the police Depending on the offense.
Which should be a lot easier to get.
Depending on the offense and depending on the circumstances. But it shouldn't be an issue. If it's a bearable offense, it shouldn't be an issue. Conditions are set out. And when the conditions are met, it shouldn't be
Somebody should be able to go home.
Yes.
Well, let's move on. And I want us to deal with the issue of Mukula tree. This is one of the biggest flourishing illegal trade in Zambia today is Mukula. And there was a ban in 2017 and it was later conditionally lifted 2017. But reports of trucks being impounded by either ZRIA or law enforcement agencies still continue, indicating clearly there's a lapse in law enforcement.
Thank you so much for that question. I think you are aware that this country is endowed with so many natural resources, which we can refer to as natural capital. And Mukura tree, which is just a type of timber, which is a type of a species of forestry, is just one of them. We've got now some gold deposits in some areas in Eastern Province and Central Province where we had illegal activities taking place. I mean, the harvest of these natural resources has been unfairly done. The government decided to, through the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, to start giving concessions to some concessionaires to harvest kola tree, as it were, in certain chiefdoms and certain areas. But then it was realized that even those concessions were being abused. And what we witnessed was indiscriminate harvesting of mukura trees. And this ended up now in two cartels, okay, of those that were harvesting and those that were buying. So, even where people would be given concessions to do a certain quantity, it was happening that now it would just open for all. And I'll give you a classic example. My constituency is a rural constituency, Shiwangando. With this type of tree being available in the area. Concessions were given there. Now, the money that comes out of these trees, first of all, must be seen. Well, apart from the few individuals, who else should benefit? Because it's a natural capital.
Where is the lapse, Minister?
I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that. Now, you go to a rural constituency such as mine, where people are made to go and harvest this type of tree, one would expect that even at the rural, most of the rural, you'd expect to see some change in the people's lives. What sort of benefits are they getting, apart from just burning their fingers, toiling for the greedy few? So when government realized that it was not helping, we were just allowing a few individuals to line up their pockets and become rich. And I'm saying this, you imagine, because as MP, apart from the little resources that we take into the constituents through national development, we also take a bit of resources through CDF. You can't even see where the logs and huge numbers of logs have been harvested. Even a toilet to say that is what the people that are harvesting Mukula tree have put there at school. And
your government.
Exactly. So when we realize that, look, we are what I can describe in my own language, becoming like umulembo wa chipuva, upira muri tumfwe, where anyone, you know, full cooking okra, and someone can come with a spoon and dip until that pot is finished, and you are watching. We said we must put a stop to this. So even those concessions that were given, we said let's hold everything. We need to take stock. And if we are to do anything with this Mukula, let it be locally done. Value addition. Why should we export the logs in their log? And when these same logs, if we put up industries here to add value to these logs, can create jobs for our own youths, for our own citizens. So that's when a decision was made to say, let's put a stop until we take stock of what has transpired, and we make sure that going forward, this harvest of these natural resources must be structured in a manner that will see local citizens benefit.
Where are we?
That's when we saw...
Where are we? There's a ban, but again, the concern from people is that...
That's when we saw an operation, a joint operation of the Defense Forces and the law enforcement agencies under my ministry, teaming up and deployed in all these areas to go and curtail the indiscriminate harvest of these species. And the decision was then made to say, let those logs that have been mopped up be accounted for and allow Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources using Zafico to see how they can dispose of that and so that the money goes to the treasury and accounted for so that it can then be utilized for the benefit of other citizens, other than just allowing the few individuals. So that operation took place, and I must commend the men and women who went out there to go and restore order.
Despite the operation, despite all these things that you've mentioned, measures being put in place, we still hear of ZRA impounding this truck, and law enforcement officers impounding this truck at the borders, and so there's still lapses.
Look,
and this whole trade is shrouded in corruption and counter-accusations of corruption. Do you know who's behind these cartels?
What we have done now is, yes, indeed, it was a concern that even with those measures put in place, and you know where there are people, these were entrenched cartels. And I'm not shy to say, even we have had to discipline some of our own officers.
You have cartels, but we haven't had so many people arrested and jailed.
No, there are a number of cases, and I think if you had to take stock and to get statistics, statistics can be availed to you. And like I'm saying, I'm not shy to tell you that we had to even go beyond and follow some of our own law enforcement officers, be it police, who were being cited to be part of these cartels, because that's the only way you could explain. Even when we said stop to this and allowed Zafico to be the only ones to do the movement, others too wanted to find a loophole. And in doing so, they would use all means by even using other people's names. People would use other people's names, and it was interesting.
Are there big names behind this trade?
As in, as the big names, I mean, there are individuals that are behind these cartels. And you see, what was unfortunate is that, you know, criminal minds can be very clever. If they find a law enforcement and they say, no, what we are carrying here is for the Minister of Lands, even when they know they are lying, they would expect to get away with that. And documentation was being manufactured to justify some of these movements to some point, and where there was collusion.
Did we have ministers named in this?
Well, I mean, like I'm saying, people have mischievously used other people's names.
Your name?
We had, well, no, my name, of course, was mentioned mischievously by some characters. But like I'm saying, when we are doing this work, mind you, when you are pouncing on people, wrongdoers, there's potential for them to fight back, and fight back hard. Fight back hard. And when you see them pointing fingers, because they know you have stepped on their where they're eating. So they won't stop at anything. They can go beyond and mention even people that are not even associated with that. We have had to bust characters who have in Northwestern Province using people's names and say, no, this consignment is for ABCD, and through that way. But at some point, those that are genuine, I mean, one should be able to find out, Honorable Kampyongo, are you aware about this?
But Minister, maybe the concern from myself and maybe other people would be, we hear all these warnings, stern warnings, and people must stop or get followed or get punished. There's little publicity about people being arrested.
Well, again, it depends.
Well, there are these trucks, which are anonymous trucks, impounded, but who's behind that? I mean, an ordinary person wouldn't go and cut Mukula and take it away. They would have to have
you know, and
to move with it.
Listen, there have been interesting circumstances. Trucks impounded Okay?
Belonging to who?
With falsified purpose. And I'm explaining to you. If you go to ZRA, they will go and share this information with you. And the people will disappear. You understand? The people with the trucks probably disappears. In some cases, you can trace the trucks to some individuals by going to the records of the vehicle registrations, RTSA, to just try and get to identify. Some cases, even when you find the person, the owners of the vehicles, they will tell you, no, we were just hired.
Delivering.
Hired and delivering to. So there are these complexities. But that's why you have seen most of these trucks and most of forfeited to the state. Because someone would have run away and abandoned, and they don't want to come and claim.
For now, maybe my last question on this.
So
but for now, it looks like government. Do you have a plan for Mukula apart from telling people to stop harvesting?
The plan.
They'll stop harvesting, then what?
No, the plan now. Government is saying we must ensure that we go value addition, so that through that value addition chain, we are able to create jobs for our citizens. We are able to make sure that in areas where these resources are coming from, there is a replanting exercise. Mind you, the plantation has got so many, the loss of plantation has got so much negative bearings. In some cases, plantation sanctuary for other natural resources like wildlife. The weather patterns where you lose all your plantation becomes an issue. And we are talking about this global warming, climate change. So what we are saying is that where we are harvesting, there must be some exercise of replanting, either the same species, and the Minister of Higher Education has been championing some initiatives to make sure that we start seeing how we can replant this type of trees in the areas where. Do
you have a plan as government to make money out of this?
That's how you can make money sustainably. It's not making money one quick off, finish off and forget. What next? How many natural resources have we lost? And there are also generations to come after us. If the people that were there before us were behaving in the manner that we have seen, I don't think we could have even found something ourselves. So we have to utilize the natural resources in a manner that is sustainable, and bearing in mind that after us, there will be other generations to come. So we shouldn't just think of ourselves and forget about those that will come up after us.
Away from Mukula, Minister.
So the government plan is to make sure that there's sustainability in the way we utilize this Mukula, and we also must make sure that the revenue that comes out of what we are disposing of trickles down to the communists of the common people in Ishwangandu. They're able to see that that school standing there was a result of the Mukula that was coming from here. Not just remaining with presters without even a small hut with roofing sheets. That's not the way we are going to work. So we support the sustainable way of harvesting and utilization of these natural resources. Away
from Mukula, maybe we could look at military personnel are being withdrawn from the streets in view of stability attained after the cholera outbreak. How do your officers intend to manage the situation?
Again, I must commend our men and women in uniform as a defense and security cluster. We are very proud of our men and women from the defense forces who were deployed under the instructions of His Excellency the President of the Republic, Said Kachagwarungu, who is also Commander-in-Chief, when the need arose to deal with that pandemic that ravaged the country in terms of cholera. Even before that, there were plans to try and see how the Minister of Local Government was going to make sure that they work on providing designated places for trading, which places were going to have human face and to allow people to trade in dignity, because where people trade, there are a lot of activities. And so, when the call was made to our men and women to get on to partner with the Minister of Health and other stakeholders, local government, to go and clean the streets and areas surrounding the CBDs. They got on the streets and did their work quite well. I know that there were, complaints from members of the public and there, but overall, I think they performed to the expectations of all of us and to the expectations of the nation. They got the streets cleaned, and the pandemic was contained. What is to follow next? What is to follow next is that with the withdrawal of our officers who have now been requested to go and perform their regular duties, and this decision was made on the 23rd of March by the President. The Zambia Police will move in and make sure that they continue patrolling all the cities to ensure that there is no return to the previous status quo. We have to be firm, and our people must appreciate that we need to go back to the normal way of trading.
You are sure the police will manage
in markets, as it were, where you knew when they sent you to the market, you knew where to go and buy fish, you knew where to go and buy tomato, you knew where to go and buy vegetables. The situation we allowed of people abandoning these designated trading spaces to come on the streets was not just a conducive way of doing business, but it was also becoming a security threat. Because as you know, also criminal elements were also now trying to hide in huge numbers present on the streets to commit their illegalities. So we want, and I'm grateful, and I must commend the Minister of Local Government for the work they're doing. We have seen the designated, I'm part of the committee that is working under the Vice President's leadership to see to it that the designated places, temporary ones, to accommodate our people that have come out of the streets are put in place. And these are taking shape. And sustainably, the new markets will be constructed at the site where they used to be Soweto market.
But I wanted
coming to the issue
public
of
wants to get assurance of sustainability
the assurance
of this project, because all the time when there's a big project, the Zambia Police is set aside by government.
It's not setting aside.
We've seen that, of course, in the Mukula, you never find police in the checkpoints. You find the army. When the smuggling was rife at its peak, ZNS had to move in. Police had to be set aside.
Whoa.
Well, during when there were ritual murders, police were set aside. The army had to move in. Police were set aside. Army had to move in.
No. So let me correct the impression.
Do we have sustainability on this
let me correct the
when
impression.
Police come in?
Let me correct the impression. The impression that to say that the police were set aside is not a factual one. But what it is that, we are now operating in clusters. Defense and security is one cluster. And where need arises, the commander-in-chief is just one, the president. Where he sees the need to get joint operations, and mind you, when you go even to our provinces, where we've got what we call joint operations committees. These joint operations committees comprise our officers from the defense and from home affairs. Even at the national level, that's how it is. So where there's need to supplement the efforts of the Zambia Police, it's within the president's needs and requirements to deploy in the joint teams to go and undertake an operation. And so in this case, it was seen that the cleaning and maintaining the streets in orderly way needed joint operations. And the pulling out of the defense forces does not entail that we are going to return to the old ways. The police are capable
up to the task
and equal to the task to make sure that we don't return to the old scenario. And we talked about the ritual killings. Yes, at one point there was a call to say, let's have the supplement efforts of the defense forces, looking at where the cases were happening. The recent ones, I think the police have been equal to the task. They've been able to manage and
without Zambia
get
Army
the
coming
suspects.
in. Now, let me, as we wind,
but at the end of the day,
I want to look at the issue of NRC.
At the end of the day, the way forward in terms of maintaining the streets clean, it's not also ideal that we should have the police presence all the time. The sustainable way forward is that the local government, we will have to capacitate the local authorities, law enforcement agencies. As you know, local authorities have got council police who would look as if they have got no capacity. But what we have decided now is that those that will be recruited will be subjected to training by the Zambia police, so to build capacity in them so that they can manage the trading places effectively, and also making sure that those areas which are not designated for trading are not invaded by lawbreakers and turn them into trading places. So that's how we intend to progress, and I think we closely working with the Minister of Local Government to ensure that that is done.
Now, as we wind down, I want us to look at the issue of new national registration cards and issuance of biometric NRCs. Initially, this project should have started first quarter of 2018, which is...
With your indulgence, Mr. Zuru, that's a very important program. And I don't think I would be doing justice to the program such as that one with the short period that we have remained. But the little that I can say is that, yes, indeed, there will be the implementation in line with the Africa agenda and the continental agenda to go digital in terms of not the issuance of ID cards, but also to turn our national registration department into a reservoir of biometric data and statistics about citizens. So in short, we are changing the whole setup, and we are also enhancing registration of events starting from birth, death, and causes of death. Now, these, like I'm saying, is a major project, and I would want to just have a program designated for it so that I can go into the details on the benefits and what is required to be done. But very soon we shall be launching in the piloted areas this program. And also to share with you that all the records, for example, you know that we used to keep piles and piles of files of citizens that could have registered from 1964 when we attained independence. All that now has been converted into digital. So at the time of people changing, acquiring new IDs, all you need to do is to feed in additional data, and then you'll have to get the new NRC. And also we are looking at enhancing the security features. And this is being supported by private stakeholders also. You know, they have got the banking sector who have had challenges with the current cards. And so it's all about getting to utilize the e-platforms, just as it is happening globally. And that also goes into other documents such as passports, because these are global documents. We need to move with the entire world in terms of what sort of passport should we have. There's talk about e-passport that we intended to utilize. So these are interrelated. And when I get to have enough time, I would want to spend as much time so that our members of the public
are able to understand. Is this likely to start soon?
Very soon indeed.
Next quarter? We're already done with one quarter?
We are hoping within this quarter we can get to commence the works. And also we need to certain approvals from Cabinet so that when we commence, we shall be all on the same platforms. And we need to make sure we disseminate as much information as possible to all the stakeholders, including the people's representatives, or in this case, the members of parliament, so that they can inform our people accordingly. But people shouldn't panic about this process. It's a process that will be done with all the caution and making sure that everybody no one is left behind.
No one is left behind.
Exactly.
Honourable Minister, thank you so much for your time.
It's been a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to coming back as soon as I can.
Well, that's all we have for this evening on Sunday Interview. We'll be back next week sometime. Pleasant viewing.
But Diana, you do that these days. You're not seeing ni chani.
You know I'm a slay queen, Kylie. I have to keep the game on point.
If the laundry is to slay.
In a laundry, I do it rapid. Plus, I need to catch up with Urmi and Samrat on TV.